Hello and welcome back to Buckle Up. I'm Harry King and this is a Citroen Berlingo. It's recently been facelifted and I'm going to find out if it's any good. Let's talk facelift. The first thing you're going to notice is there's no longer a grille up here, which might make this look like an electric van, but don't be fooled, this is an diesel. You've also got the new Citroen badge, which is a kind of 1920s throwback, bit Art Deco, lovely, with kind of some ribbing here for her pleasure. Lower down you have the actual air intakes, black plastic bumpers, and this van comes in grey. Here we discover that this van has been fitted with the king of all wheels, the 16-inch steel wheel. The advantage of that is twofold. Number one, if anything bad happens to your wheel, it's cheap to fix. And number two, if anything bad happens to your tyres, they're cheap to replace. That's what we like to see on a professional vehicle, cost-effective running. You also have this side door. You don't have one on the other side. I assume it's optional. But I have to admit at this point, the spec sheet I've been sent for this van is incorrect because it says this is automatic and it definitely isn't. I may not be the best motoring journalist in the world, but I know a manual gearbox when I see one. That's handy though, and obviously it locks in place if you're on a hill and releases nice and easily. Round at the back, you get your usual badging, so you've got your Citroen badge, Berlingo. Down here you've got your Made in Britain badge with a flag, and that means that these eggs were reared in a cruelty-free environment and they're free range. Now, if I open up the back doors of the... Oh, actually, no. First, I want to call out the double camera situation. So down here I have an reversing camera next to my number plate, and then up here I have my third brake light, and there's another camera there, and that's not to spy on you by the French government. That is for the rear view mirror, which obviously I will talk about more inside. Open this up though. Obviously you've got one handle on the outside, small door with the handle on the inside. They open up to 90 degrees in the first stage, and then you just pull this little tab here, and then they open the full 180 degrees for full ease of loading. The back of the van itself has 3.3 cubic meters of storage space, which is plenty, and very competitive payload figures. The thing I do just want to call out, this doesn't come with any sort of panelling or flooring as standard, so you will need to fit that yourself if you're carrying a more fragile load. But otherwise, I think there's a brilliant amount of space on offer, and there's a couple of bits of modularity that I'll call out once we actually go up to the front seats. Welcome to my van. First thing I want to talk about is if I pull a blue cord up here on this chair, I then get through loading to the rear compartment, so I can actually take very, very long items indeed, 2x4 basically, and pop it in this channel, and it'll hold it in place, and it means that you get long van practicality in a small package, which is lovely. That's what everyone really wants, isn't it? I'll pop that back up though, because also the middle seat does some stuff. Where's the pull cord for that? Down here. Pop this down, and then I've got a table. So I can move that forwards and then move it side to side if I want to use it, or the passenger wants to use it. Goes all the way across. I mean, I guess work, you could do paperwork on this, put a laptop on it, or more importantly, you could eat lunch. Which is my main concern, obviously. Pop that back up, and then this is 3 seats. If that hasn't been illuminated to you already, you've got these 2 bench seats here, which are quite narrow. If you had 3 fully grown adults in here, it would be a tight squeeze, and obviously the middle passenger's knees need to fit round this somehow, but it's doable. My seat is separate, so I can set it separately. It's manual, obviously. It's not even heated or anything. It's a van. But I have been able to get into a good driving position. I feel comfortable and far enough back, even with the bulkhead in place. The same could not be said, for example, for the Renault and Mercedes small vans. In front of me, I have 3 screens, because the rearview mirror is actually a screen itself, but it just shows a camera display behind the vehicle. And then if I turn the ignition on with an real key, it will liven up the rest of the screens. I'll turn the aircon down with my physical climate controls. So I've got this central display here for the infotainment that has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. I've got loads of buttons in here, so I've got a full climate control down here. I can do my fan speed and temperature on dials, change my air direction. I've got heated wing mirrors, lovely. Above that, I've got this center screen. I control the radio, and there's also integrated sat nav, but personally I would just use the Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And then down below, I've got 2 USB-Cs, one of which connects the Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. I've got a cubby for the phone, the digital handbrake, a couple of blank buttons, and I do have a couple of blank buttons down here as well. This is also where I can configure my screen to some extent. I can cycle through 5 different displays, but personally I would just keep it fairly clear and uncluttered. Manual gear shift, and I've got a 12-volt socket right down here at the bottom. In terms of practicality, obviously this is a van. Very important to have lots of cubbies. My favourite one is this one, hidden under the seat. It's absolutely huge. An ideal place to keep pork pies. I have 3 different levels of glove boxery. So I've got this low one, which has this very, very mangled up owner's manual in it. And then I've got a kind of small shelf here, and then also a proper full glove box up here, and it's not been taken away by the fuse box or anything. You actually get the whole space. I've got cup holders up here on the dashboard, which is handy, although they are above the air vents rather than in front of them, so you don't get the advantage of them being kept hot or cold by the air vents. And I've got massive door pockets as well, but no cutout for a bottle in them. I like this a lot. I have the kind of shelf up here, which is ideal for putting your red top newspaper in, for example. Absolutely colossal sun visors, obviously, because the windscreen's huge. No mirror in them or anything, which actually means you might be thinking there's no mirror in here at all. But don't worry, if you flick this switch on the bottom of the rear camera display, it does just turn into a normal mirror, which has no function at all because this is a solid bulkhead. But I'll pop that back on. Steering wheel controls, proper buttons. This is also a kind of newer shaped Citroen wheel, so it's got a flat top and bottom and the newer logo on it, which all feels very nice, but of course it is just like a plastic rubberized grip around the edge, because again, this is a van. You don't need any of that frippery here. And then a couple of last hidden bits of storage. I've got this pop-up box on top of the dashboard, and I also have a little space behind the screen, which is sort of hidden from the driver's view, but I guess you could put Greg's sausage rolls up there and it'd be a handy place to, while you're driving, and then swap, change to gear shift, back to sausage rolls. Perfect. Living my dream life, pretty much. Let's find out though what it's like to drive. Okay then, driving the Citroen Berlingo van. Let's start with some key figures. I believe this is the version with 100 PS, give or take, 102 I think, and 250 Newton meters of torque. That's what the spec sheet says, but then of course it says it should be an automatic. There is a version available with 130 PS, which obviously would be better suited if you're going to be carrying heavy loads in the back of this. And there's an electric variant as well, although my main concern with the electric variant would be the range and the charging speed. But we can get onto that another day when I'm driving that van. Unladen, the van weighs about 1.4 tons, so with 100 horsepower and a healthy wattage of torque, it gets down the road fairly well. The main thing is, unlike some of the other small vans, I'm thinking the Transit Courier and the small Renault Kangoo and Mercedes Citan vans, this does drive much more like a van, if that makes sense. This is actually bigger than those, so it's more similar in size to a Caddy, which helps to explain that in part. But basically what I'm getting at is it's a bit number, the steering is lighter, there's less feedback. None of these are necessarily bad things. It's just if you get into those other vans, it's generally surprising how nice they are to drive. This drives like a van. Super, super light controls. The gearbox is fairly well set up. It's easy to change gears in it, and it can be done nice and smoothly. The clutch has a really nice smooth engagement, but there is little feel in both controls. The brakes themselves are nice to modulate. They stop the van well enough, which is really good. Your isolation from the outside world is actually quite good. It's echoey though back there. There's not really any sound deadening in the ceiling, and because there's no panelling, that is accentuated. In most small vans they will come as standard without panelling, so that's pretty much part of the course. But I think having that foldable bulkhead just lets a little bit more sound in from the back. The engine itself, though, is nicely quiet and fairly smooth. I can't feel vibrations too much, even at idle. It's also very low geared, so I'm already in 6th gear without even reaching maximum A-road speeds. This has speed sign recognition, so it'll tell you the prevailing speed limit on speed signs. It also has cruise control, but it is just cruise control. It does have some steering assist to it, like a lane departure warning, but it won't steer for you entirely, and no radar per se. But I think that's absolutely fine. And honestly, in some applications, I prefer having standard cruise control, because the radars, God, even at the short distance, no one else on the motorway is driving with that much space between vehicles, and people do just cut you up. And it also starts to slow down quite a long way back from a lorry, for example, which means you have to pull out really early, and that can aggravate your fellow driver. I'm going to say there's enough grip on this van. Obviously, you're not going to be throwing it into corners or anything, and it definitely, if pushed, would give up in the form of understeer. What is good, though, is the dimensions of the van. So it's what I consider to be a really good sized space back there, 3.3 cubic meters, but excluding the mirrors, this is less than 1.9 meters wide, so it's not too wide for a country road. It's not too long. You can easily fit it in a standard parking space or drive it around in a city area, which obviously those are the advantages of those really small Ford and Renault / Nissan / Mercedes vans, which this is competitive with in price. This here starts from £20,000, and I think this one's 23. That's very competitive with the Mercedes offering, and obviously much more practicality and much more comfortable up here as a driver. There's just more room and more cubbies. Other things, this does have a towing capacity of around a ton. I don't think you would use a vehicle of this size or this power for towing. If you want to do towing in a van, go and get something a bit bigger. I would fully recommend the Sprinter for that, being rear-wheel drive. It is slightly better set up to be a tow platform or a full-size Transit. Of course, if you really want to do loads of towing, I'd recommend a pickup truck. So to summarise the driving, it's not winning any awards for its dynamic prowess, but it's quiet and it's comfortable, and it does everything you need it to do as a professional vehicle. And that's really the key thing here. So let's go back and do a proper conclusion. So, what do I think about the Citroen Berlingo? It makes a lot of sense as a small van. The prices are good. There's a lot of space available for the amount of money this van costs compared to its rivals. It's got all of the nice, nifty little features you'd want on the inside, and it's available with a full range of powertrains to suit your business needs. So I would say go and check out the Citroen Berlingo. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. If you go down into the description, you'll find all the links to all our social medias and also the comment section. Please go and use it. Tell me what you think about this van. Tell me what you would prefer, or if you think this is the best in class. Also, there are two ways you can support the channel. We have channel merch, and we also have channel memberships over on our main channel. So please go check that out, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.